Hey Giants fans and football fans, welcome to the Giants Grit channel, your fan channel with the Giants views and reviews without the theatrics, as honestly and as unbiased as I can. But sometimes the Giants make it hard. They're 2-8 now, so I mean they're practically eliminated from playoff contention. It's not official yet, but it's just not looking good. Well, I mean, final score was 20-17 in Germany against the Panthers, arguably the worst team in the NFL, but now it looks like the Giants will take that title. Games, basically, in a nutshell, they lost because of the interior defensive line and because of the quarterbacking, almost identical to last week. So Daniel Jones was 22 of 37 for 190 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, both interceptions backbreakers in the end zone. It started off early, third down, it was a 3rd and 8, and he missed a wide open Malik Neighbors. So it kind of set the tone for the game. He rushed for about 26 yards on like 5 carries. He's running better the last 2 weeks than he has, but he's not the same runner that he used to be. But he was a big reason, the biggest reason they lost the game, and that and the interior defensive line. As far as running backs are concerned, Tyrone Tracy had an excellent game, 18 carries for 103 yards. He had a nice 32-yard touchdown run, and Devin Singletary also had a nice game. He had 8 carries for 40 yards, so they both had over 5 yards a carry. Unfortunately, Tracy had the fumble first play in overtime from scrimmage that the Panthers recovered, and 3 plays later they kicked the winning field goal. It was 17-17 in overtime before that game-winning field goal. No other running backs. Oh, Eric Gray, he didn't have any carries, but he had a couple of plays from scrimmage, and he averaged about 25 yards on his kickoffs. As far as wide receivers, Malik Neighbors, he had 6 catches for 50 yards. He didn't get his first catch until the 3rd quarter, which is starting to be a problem. He hasn't been the same since he's come back from his concussion, and it looked like he almost got another one late in the game, but he came back and he was still okay. Jalen Hyatt got the start for Darius Slayton, and he had 4 catches for 39 yards, and he also drew a penalty. The first play from scrimmage of the Giants, he drew a 43-yard pass interference penalty, which the Giants end up punting from that possession and didn't take advantage of a sweet penalty that got him 43 yards. So, but it's kind of been par for the course. Other wide receivers, Wan'Dale Robinson, he picked it up a little bit. I said in my last week and last videos that he seemed to be wearing down. He was still getting his 4 to 7 catches a game or 4 to 6 catches a game, but he was only averaging like 3-4 yards a catch. This time it stepped up a little bit. He had 5 catches for 51 yards, over 10 yards a catch, and he had 4 first downs out of those 5 catches though. But still, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, he's running routes where he's really not getting an opportunity to get some yards after catch. Fortunately, he was still able to get some on his own, but again, that's, he's a small slot receiver, and I just feel like the Giants are just not using him correctly. So, but still, he's a solid player, so I still think he's part of the Giants' future. Isaiah Hodgkins had 1 catch for 7 yards, and that was it for as far as the wide receivers are concerned. As far as tight ends are concerned, Theo Johnson had 4 catches for 37 yards. He didn't get started until the 4th quarter himself. I think he had 1 target in the first 3 quarters. I said last week when they used him a lot, they have to use him more. I just feel like he's just not getting targeted enough. And also on the interception, on Daniel Jones' 2nd interception, on the throw to Tyrone Tracy, which was behind him, he had Theo Johnson wide open. I mean, Johnson probably would have scored on there. So it's just, Daniel Jones is just missing receivers. I mean, even Kurt Warner, one of the announcers, him and Rich Eisen were the announcers for the game. Kurt Warner, it almost felt like he was picking on the Giants. However, he was totally honest, and he said that Daniel Jones is just missing he's missing his open receivers. There's only so much coaching can do. If your quarterback can't get the ball to his receivers, what's the rest of the offense? He had good pass blocking. Receivers were getting open. I'll get to the offensive line in a few seconds, but what more can you do for Daniel Jones? The receivers can't throw it for him. So as far as other tight ends, Daniel Bellinger, I don't think he got no playing time from the line of scrimmage. Chris Manhertz, he did his solid blocking. Theo Johnson's blocking was okay, but I feel Theo Johnson's not blocking as good as he can be. He looks like he has some opportunities to really smoke some guys, whereas he's just kind of putting his body on them and barely blocking them. So I feel like he's almost putting basketball screens on them when he should just be blowing these smaller guys away. So, but nonetheless, I'm happy with Theo Johnson. I think he's going to be a developing player, and I think they gotta target him 6 to 8 times a game. Minimum. So he should come out of every game with at least 5 or 6 catches every single game. He can be a weapon for them moving forward. As far as the offensive line is concerned, I thought last week they had their best game overall for the season. This game, maybe not quite as good, but I felt like they played pretty well. I would give them a good C+. The run blocking was good. I mean, Tyrone Tracy had over 100 yards rushing. Devin Singletary had, 40 yards. They had over 150 yards combined. Add that with Daniel Jones' 27 yards, and they had over 150-something yards, 167 yards rushing. And in addition to that, the pass blocking was good. There were a couple of whiffs. Evan Neal was starting for Chris Hubbard at right tackle. They moved Illuminor over from right tackle to left tackle. Except for a couple plays on the screen pass, both tackles looked like they got hurt, and Daniel Jones almost threw another interception, but fortunately it went at Singletary's feet. So, except for maybe 4 or 5 plays, the pass blocking held up, and the all 3 interior offensive linemen for the Giants, I thought they did a good job. You didn't notice them. There were no jailbreaks. There were no easy crushes in the middle on the running backs. Overall, I'd give anything from a C+ to a B- on the offensive line play. Now, moving on to the defense, again, the interior defensive line, maybe right equal with Daniel Jones. They played horrible. Dexter Lawrence, 2nd game in a row, no sacks. Still a solid game from him, but I mean, the bar is raised so high for him here. You got a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and he did have 4 sacks. Quarterback hit. He had a really nice pressure where he basically put the center on skates to force Carolina quarterback Bryce Young into a bad throw. But somewhat quiet game for him. But when he was out, sure enough, Carolina was able to run all over the Giants. Other defensive tackles were getting pushed back. They couldn't come off of blocks. They were creating so much traffic and trash that the inside linebackers didn't have a good game because the defensive line can't get off blocks, can't hold the offensive linemen from reaching out on the second level. So Nacho had 1 tackle for loss. DJ Davison recovered the fumble on the only turnover that the Giants forced, but again, there's really nothing to help Dexter Lawrence on the interior defensive line. It would probably help if Shane Bowen would actually play a true 3-man defensive line instead of just having 2 defensive tackles and using the edge rushers as down linemen. So I'd like to see them switch it up a little bit because they're just getting gashed on the ground way too much. So Giants are leading the NFL in sacks, but it's not going to be for long. So moving on to the edge rushers, Brian Burns was all over the place. He had an excellent game. He's their defensive player of the game for the Giants. He had 9 tackles. He had the first and only sack of the game. He got a lot of pressures. He had a couple of tackles for losses, had a couple of quarterback hits, and he really came close on a couple of almost sacks. So, yeah, Brian Burns looking like he's worth it now. Giants maybe rightfully so caught some criticism for the trade for him and then the big contract afterwards, but the guy's a playmaker, and he's a big reason why the game's even close. Obviously, second to Dexter Lawrence. But yeah, next to Dexter Lawrence, he's our second best defensive player. And we're also missing Aziz Ardjalari was invisible this game. I mean, this is his 5th straight game starting for Kayvon Thibodeau, and we're missing Thibodeau's all-around game. I mean, Aziz is good a pass rusher, maybe even a better pure pass rusher than Kayvon Thibodeau, but Thibodeau definitely plays the run better, can set a better edge, and part of the reason why Carolina ran for Hubbard had 153 yards rushing by himself, so. And yeah, Aziz did not play the run well. No sacks. He just had a couple of tackles. I think he had 1 quarterback hit. So yeah, no other outside line, edge rushers contributed. So moving on to the inside linebackers, Bobby Okereke, he had 11 tackles for the game, but it must have been the quietest 11 tackle game you ever seen. But same thing. I mean, he was getting caught in the wash, caught in the trash. Offensive linemen are getting out. They're getting able to get a head of steam, and they're able to lock on or even screen the inside linebackers, and that's why Carolina running backs are getting good. Getting a good running game going. So Micah McFadden, same thing. He had 7 tackles, but a lot of them down the field. He got dragged on a couple. It's beginning to be the same thing from Micah McFadden in every game. He's the type of player, he's a solid player, but he needs good players around him to really be productive. So he's not a playmaker. Unfortunately, Bobby Okereke, who was a playmaker for them last year, is not doing it this year. But, they both need help from the interior defensive line, to say the least. Moving on to the secondary, so-so game from him. Deonte Banks, he looked like he got benched there in the late in the second quarter, even into the third for Adoree Jackson. But no big plays. He didn't really give up any big plays, and didn't make any noticeable tackles or pass defenses. So, but gosh, you'd like to see him step up his game. I wish he could just play the ball better. It seems like the Giants haven't had a corner who could play the ball since Corey Webster and/or Terrell Thomas. Cordell Flott looks like Cordell Flott's developing pretty nicely. He had 3 tackles and he had a nice pass defense early in the game. I think he's developing. I think he could be a good second corner or even third corner. So Deonte Banks, I haven't lost faith in him, but yeah, he's definitely got to step it up. He's had a rough patch of games. Adoree Jackson played a little bit. Nothing really went his way, so that's a good thing. Drew Phillips, after a bad couple of games, he stepped it up again. He had 5 tackles, and he had 3 really nice tackles, including he forced a fumble in the fourth quarter. He made the tackle and forced the fumble, so great play by him. So yeah, number 22, Drew Phillips, looking good. And speaking of rookies, moving on to the safeties, Tyler Nubin had, in my opinion, the best game of his season. He had 12 tackles. Looks solid. He looks really good when he's close to the line of scrimmage. So I think, depending on what they do next year, whether they let Jason Pinnock walk in free agency or not, Tyler Nubin, I think, needs to be close to the line of scrimmage. He doesn't give up big plays in the passing game, but he hasn't made any plays either. Perhaps he's not fast enough in the NFL game to make plays on the ball in deep coverage like he could when he was in college, when he was a playmaker. But he still could be very solid, I think, in the NFL. Just maybe not really in the passing game, but definitely close to the line of scrimmage. He's an excellent tackler, and he led the Giants in tackles with 12 of them this game. Dane Belton started for Jason Pinnock, who was out with injury, and he had 3 tackles. Nothing really good or bad in the passing game, but he did, on Carolina's second possession, had a big missed tackle on Carolina running back Hubbard that went for 20 plus yards. So yeah, that was definitely on him. So he's definitely not a starter. Nice depth guy, but Dane Belton is not a guy you want starting. So, and that's it. No other safeties had any playtime from scrimmage. The special teams, Gangano missed a field goal, his first field goal attempt, and coming back from injury. He nailed the second one, but his kickoffs were okay. But I don't know. I mean, he makes a lot of money for a kicker, so I think the Giants should move on from him next year. As far as coverage was okay. Nothing stood out as far as kickoffs return. Eric Gray averaged 25 yards, 25 yards and change on his returns. And Smith, Marset, he had his usual punt returns that were just okay. He got a penalty and stupid play, but he was lucky it got offset because the Carolina Panthers also had a penalty. So, yeah, overall, like identical to last week, the quarterbacking and the interior defensive line play was horrible, and it's a big reason why they lost to the worst team in the NFL, arguably. Now the Giants, I think, can officially take worst team in the NFL. It's painful. It's hard to do these videos, doing my write-ups, watching the game. Well, hang in there. You know, you don't want them tanking. I just want them to play as hard as they can. Next week is a bye week. They'll come back and they'll play against Dallas on Thanksgiving. So hopefully they'll bounce back. It's going to be tough. But, you know, you want them to win as many games as they can, and you want to see the young players develop. So, all right, next week, instead of a game review, I'll have my free agency preview and my NFL mock draft preview. So I hope you guys all tune in. Please like and subscribe. Please look at next week's episode, as I will do a preview of the NFL draft and free agency on what I think the Giants could and should do this offseason. All right. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.